Desperate to save her father, Selina Carter agrees to a shocking proposal. One night with ruthless billionaire Dominic Caldwell for $1 million. But when emotions get involved, neither of them is prepared for what comes next. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. Selina Carter stared at her laptop screen, eyes blurry from exhaustion and worry. Another medical bill had arrived for her father's cancer treatments, $75,000 that insurance wouldn't cover. The eviction notice on her counter gave her just 3 days to come up with 6 months of back rent. She pushed her dark hair away from her face and closed her eyes. At 28, she never imagined her life would come to this, working 3 jobs and still drowning in debt. Her phone rang, displaying her best friend's name. "Hey, Mia," she answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Did you see the email I forwarded you?" Mia asked, excitement in her voice. "The one about that exclusive matchmaking service? I don't have time for dating, Mia. Dad's treatments—" "This isn't regular dating, Selina. This service connects attractive young women with wealthy businessmen. Some of these arrangements can be very lucrative." Selina frowned. "Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? Look, these are powerful men who don't have time for relationships. Sometimes they just want company for a night, and they pay well for it." "So it's basically high-end escort work," Selina said flatly. "It's just dinner dates and parties. What happens after is between consenting adults." Mia paused. "One night could solve all your problems, Sel. Just think about it." After hanging up, Selina stared at the eviction notice again. Her father's tired face flashed in her mind, how he'd apologized over and over for being a burden, despite having raised her alone after her mother died. With shaking hands, she opened Mia's email. 3 days later, Selina sat in the sleek office of Elite Arrangements, across from a polished woman named Ms. Reynolds. "Your application has received immediate interest," Ms. Reynolds said, sliding a tablet across the desk. "Specifically from this client." Selina's breath caught as she looked at the profile. Dominic Caldwell. Even she recognized his name. A 38-year-old real estate mogul known for transforming the New York skyline and his ruthless business tactics. His offer was straightforward, $1 million for one night. "This is unusual," Ms. Reynolds admitted. "Mr. Caldwell rarely uses our services, and he's never made an offer this substantial." "Why me?" Selina asked, stunned. "He saw your photo and information and made an immediate decision." "That's all I know." Ms. Reynolds leaned forward. "You should understand this is completely confidential. You'd be required to sign NDAs, and Mr. Caldwell has specific expectations." "Which are?" "1 night, no strings attached. After that, you never contact him again." Selina felt her cheeks burn. $1 million. Her father's medical bills, the rent, even money to finish her nursing degree. "I need to think about it," she whispered. Ms. Reynolds nodded. "He wants an answer by tomorrow." "The night?" Selina sat beside her father's hospital bed watching him sleep. The machines beeped steadily, monitoring the life that was slowly slipping away from him. "I don't know what to do, Dad," she whispered, knowing he couldn't hear her. "I've tried everything." As if in response, her father's breathing became labored, and a nurse rushed in to adjust his oxygen. "The new treatment could really help him," the nurse said kindly, "but I know it's not covered by insurance." Selina nodded, her decision crystallizing. For her father, she'd do anything. The next morning, she called Ms. Reynolds. "I accept Mr. Caldwell's offer." 2 days later, Selina found herself in the elevator of New York's most exclusive residential building, rising toward the penthouse. She wore a simple black dress Mia had loaned her, her long dark hair falling in waves down her back. Her heart pounded as the elevator doors opened directly into a stunning apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. "Ms. Carter." The deep voice startled her. Dominic Caldwell stood by the windows, a glass of whiskey in hand. He was taller than she expected, broad-shouldered in an expertly tailored suit. His dark hair was cut short, his jawline sharp, and his eyes, a piercing blue, assessed her coolly. "Mr. Caldwell," she managed. "Dominic," he corrected, approaching her. He circled her slowly, like a predator. You're even more beautiful in person. Selina lifted her chin. Is this where you inspect the merchandise? A flash of surprise crossed his face, followed by amusement. Feisty. That wasn't in your profile. There's a lot about me that isn't in that profile. He smiled then, a genuine smile that transformed, his face making him look younger, almost approachable. Would you like a drink? He asked, gesturing to the bar. No, thank you. She straightened her shoulders. I think we should discuss expectations for tonight. Dominic raised an eyebrow. Direct. I like that. He moved to the sofa and sat, indicating she should join him. My expectations are simple. Your company for dinner and afterward. His eyes darkened. Well, that's the main reason you're here, isn't it? Selina swallowed. Yes, but I need to know the money will be transferred as agreed. Half has already been sent to your account. The other half will be transferred by morning. He studied her. Now I have a question. Why did you accept? The unexpected question threw her. I need the money. Everyone needs money. But $1 million for one night. That's desperate. His eyes narrowed. What's your story, Selina? Carter? Something in his tone made her answer honestly. My father has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The treatment he needs isn't covered by insurance, and I'm about to be evicted. Dominic's expression remained neutral, but something flashed in his eyes. I see. He stood abruptly. Dinner will be served on the terrace. There's a bathroom through that door if you'd like to freshen up. Alone in the luxurious bathroom, Selina splashed water on her face. What was she doing here? She'd never imagined. Selling herself no matter how desperate things got. But wasn't that exactly what she was doing? When she returned, Dominic was on the terrace, his back to her as he looked out at the city lights. The table was set for two, with candles flickering in the evening breeze. He turned as she approached, and for a moment, just a moment, she saw something vulnerable in his expression. You don't have to go through with this, he said suddenly. The money is yours regardless. Stunned, Selina stared at him. What? I'm not in the habit of forcing women into my bed. His voice was gruff. The arrangement stands, but what happens? Tonight is your choice. Relief washed over her, followed by confusion. Then why offer so much money in the first place? He gestured for her to sit, pouring her a glass of water. Let's just say I was intrigued. Your photo showed something different. I wanted to meet you. As dinner progressed, an exquisite meal prepared by his private chef, Selina found herself relaxing. Dominic asked about her nursing studies, listened attentively as she spoke about her father, and shared stories about his own rise in the business world. You're not what I expected, she admitted over dessert. And what did you expect, a cold-hearted billionaire who buys women? She blushed. Something like that. That's part of me, he acknowledged, but not all of me. Their eyes locked, and the air between them changed. The attraction she'd been fighting all evening surged forward. Why did you really agree to this arrangement, Dominic? He was quiet for a long time. I don't do relationships. My work doesn't allow it. But sometimes, he looked away. Sometimes, the loneliness becomes too much. His honesty surprised her. This powerful man, admitting to loneliness. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Selina felt the weight of the decision before her. The money was hers either way, but something else was happening between them, something unexpected. Tell me about your father, Dominic said, as they sat side by side on the sofa. He raised me alone after my mom died when I was 10, worked 2 jobs so I could have everything I needed. Tears pricked at her eyes. Now he's dying and I can't help him. You're helping him now, Dominic said softly. You're sacrificing for him, just as he did for you. She looked up to find his face inches from hers. Without thinking, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss deepened instantly, his arms pulling her close. Selina lost herself in the sensation, forgetting for a moment why she was there. When they broke apart, both breathing heavily, Dominic cupped her face. Are you sure? In answer, she kissed him again. As his hands moved over her body, all thoughts of their arrangement faded. This no longer felt like a transaction. It felt like desire, pure and simple. Later, lying in his massive bed, Selina watched Dominic sleep. His face, relaxed in slumber, looked younger, almost innocent. How strange that this man, who'd offered $1 million for her body, had ended up treating her with more respect than any man she'd ever known. Her phone buzzed with a text. Carefully sliding out of bed, she checked it. A notification from her bank. The full $1 million had been transferred. She should leave now, she thought. That was the deal. One night, no strings, but as she looked back at Dominic, something held her in place, something that felt dangerously like connection. As dawn broke over New York, Selina made her decision. She slipped back into her dress, wrote a brief note thanking him, and left it on the pillow. The elevator ride down felt like descending from a dream back to reality. She had what she came for, the money to save her father and secure her future. So why did it feel like she was leaving something precious behind? In his penthouse, Dominic woke to an empty bed and a simple note. He read it once, then again, his expression unreadable. Picking up his phone, he called his assistant. "I need everything you can find on Selina Carter." One night was all they had agreed to. But Dominic Caldwell wasn't a man who let go of what he wanted. And for the first time in years, he wanted someone more than anything. Selina had no idea, but their story was just beginning. 2 weeks had passed since that night with Dominic Caldwell. Selina sat in the hospital waiting room, anxiously tapping her foot as her father underwent his first round of the experimental treatment she'd finally been able to afford. "Miss Carter?" The nurse appeared with a clipboard. "Your father is asking for you." Selina found her father sitting up in bed, looking more alert than he had in months. "There's my girl," Robert Carter said, his voice weak but his smile strong. "Come sit and tell me how you managed this miracle." Selina kissed his forehead and sat beside him. "I told you, Dad. I got a grant from a medical foundation." The lie tasted bitter, but she couldn't tell her father the truth. He'd raised her with strong values, working his fingers to the bone as a mechanic to provide for her. He'd never accept money earned the way she'd gotten it, even if she didn't regret her decision. "Well, I'm grateful," he said, patting her hand. "The doctor says I might actually have a fighting chance now." Tears welled in her eyes. "That's all I wanted to hear." Later, as she was leaving the hospital, her phone buzzed with a text from Mia. "Turn on Channel 8 now." Confused, Selina rushed to her car and turned on the radio, finding the local news station. Billionaire Dominic Caldwell announced a new foundation today focused on covering experimental cancer treatments for patients without insurance coverage. When asked about his sudden interest in medical philanthropy, Caldwell simply stated it was time to give back. Selina's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. It couldn't be a coincidence. But how would Dominic even know which hospital her father was in? Her phone rang, an unknown number. "Hello," she answered cautiously. "Ms. Carter." The familiar deep voice sent shivers down her spine. "I trust your father's treatment is going well?" Selina's heart pounded. "How did you know about that? Are you having me followed?" "Let's just say I like to keep informed about things that interest me." "The foundation. Is that because of what I told you?" There was a pause. "I make business decisions based on many factors." "This isn't right," she said, her voice shaking. "Our arrangement was one night. No strings attached, that's what you wanted." "Plans change," his voice dropped lower. "Have dinner with me tonight." "No." She tried to sound firm despite the flutter in her stomach. "I won't be bought again." "This isn't about buying you, Selina. This is a simple dinner invitation." "There's nothing simple about you, Mr. Caldwell," he chuckled, the sound warming her despite her resistance. "Dominic," he corrected. "And you're right, but I still want to see you again." Selina closed her eyes, fighting the pull she felt toward him. "Why?" "Have dinner with me and find out." Before she could respond, he added, 7 p.m. My driver will pick you up. "And Selina?" "This time, it's just dinner. I promise." The line went dead, leaving her staring at her phone. She should refuse, draw a clear line. But curiosity and something deeper tugged at her. At 6:55 p.m., a sleek black car pulled up outside her modest apartment building. The driver opened the door for her, revealing Dominic himself sitting inside. "I thought your driver was picking me up," she said, sliding in reluctantly. I decided to come myself. His eyes took in her simple blue dress. You look beautiful. Selina looked away, fighting a blush. Where are we going? Somewhere private. The car took them through the city to a small exclusive restaurant tucked away on a side street. The maitre d' led them to a secluded table in the back. I ordered for us already, Dominic said as they sat. I hope you don't mind. Actually, I do. Selina raised an eyebrow. I prefer to make my own choices. Something like admiration flashed in his eyes. Of course. Please, order whatever you'd like. After the waiter took their orders, an awkward silence fell between them. Why am I here, Dominic? She finally asked. He studied her face. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. Because I was a challenge? The woman who left before you woke up? Because you're the first woman in years who looked at me and saw more than my bank account. His honesty surprised her. You didn't pretend to laugh at my jokes. You challenged me. You were real. Selina shifted uncomfortably. You don't even know me. I know enough to want to know more. He leaned forward. Your father raised you alone after your mother died from breast cancer when you were 10. You were studying nursing before his diagnosis forced you to take 3 jobs to support him. You volunteer at a children's hospital on your rare days off. You investigated me. Her voice hardened. Is that supposed to impress me? I investigate everyone I'm interested in. He didn't look apologetic. It's how I protect myself. From what? People who want things from me, Selina laughed bitterly. I wanted $1 million from you, remember? And now that you have it? His eyes locked with hers. What do you want now? The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Their food arrived, providing a welcome distraction. As they ate, Dominic surprised her by asking about her nursing studies, listening intently as she talked about her passion for pediatric care. You could go back to school now, he pointed out. You have the money. I will, once Dad is stable. She took a sip of water. I don't want to be away from him right now. Dominic nodded, understanding in his eyes. Family is important. Do you have family? She asked, realizing she knew almost nothing about him personally. Something dark crossed his face. My parents died in a car accident when I was 20. My younger sister lives in Europe. We're not close. I'm sorry, he shrugged. It was a long time ago. As dinner progressed, Selina found herself relaxing, even laughing at Dominic's surprisingly dry sense of humor. He told stories about his early days in real estate, working his way up from nothing. People think I was born rich, he said. They don't know I grew up in a trailer park in New Jersey. My first job was as a janitor in an office building. How did you get from there to here? His eyes gleamed. Determination, and a talent for seeing potential where others saw nothing. The way he looked at her as he said it made her breath catch. After dinner, they walked along the waterfront, the city lights reflecting on the dark water. Can I ask you something personal? Selina ventured. You can ask. Why pay for company? Someone like you could have any woman you wanted. Dominic was quiet for a long moment. Dating is complicated in my position. Women see the money, not the man. And relationships require time and emotional investment I can't afford to give. So it's easier to just pay for one night. It's cleaner. No messy feelings, no expectations. He stopped walking and turned to her. At least, that's how it usually works. Their eyes met, and Selina felt that same pull she'd experienced in his penthouse. And with me, she whispered. With you, nothing is working the way it should. His hand came up to touch her cheek. I can't stop thinking about you, Selina. Before she could respond, her phone rang loudly. Checking it, she saw the hospital's number. I have to take this, she said, stepping away. Hello, yes, this is Selina Carter. Her face paled as she listened. I'll be right there, she said, hanging up. What is it? Dominic asked, concern in his voice. My father. His body is rejecting the treatment. They need me at the hospital immediately. Without hesitation, Dominic guided her back to his car. I'll take you. At the hospital, Selina rushed to her father's room, Dominic following behind. Robert Carter lay unconscious, machines beeping around him. What happened? She asked the doctor. His body had a severe reaction to the treatment, Dr. Peters explained. We've stabilized him, but he's very weak. The next 24 hours will be critical. Selina sank into the chair beside her father's bed, taking his hand gently. Can I get you anything? Dominic asked softly. Coffee? Food? She shook her head, suddenly aware of how out of place he looked in his expensive suit. You don't have to stay, she said. I'm not leaving you alone. His tone left no room for argument. He pulled up another chair and sat beside her. Through the night, Selina kept vigil. Dominic remained quietly making calls when necessary, but mostly just being present. When she finally dozed off from exhaustion, he covered her with his jacket. Morning came with a ray of hope. Robert's vitals had stabilized. As he began to wake, Dominic discreetly stepped out of the room. Who was that man? Robert asked weakly, once fully awake. Just a friend, Selina answered. Doesn't look like just a friend to me. Despite his condition, her father's eyes were sharp. He watched over you all night like you were precious cargo. Selina didn't know how to respond to that. Dr. Peters came in to check on Robert. The good news is, despite this setback, we're seeing positive responses in your blood work. We'll need to adjust the treatment protocol, but I'm cautiously optimistic. After the doctor left, Selina stepped into the hallway to give her father some rest. She found Dominic speaking with Dr. Peters in hushed tones. As she approached, they quickly ended their conversation. What was that about? She asked suspiciously. Just getting an update on your father's condition. Dominic's face was unreadable. Dr. Peters nodded. Mr. Caldwell has been very helpful. His foundation is covering all of your father's care now. Selina felt her temper flare. I never asked for that. You didn't have to, Dominic said quietly. After the doctor left, she confronted him. I don't want your charity. It's not charity, it's... What? Another way to buy me? Hurt flashed across his face. Is that what you think of me? I don't know what to think anymore. She ran a hand through her hair in frustration. 1 minute you're this cold businessman buying a night with me. The next you're creating foundations and paying for my father's care. Who are you really, Dominic? He stepped closer. I'm someone who cares about you, Selina. More than I should. More than makes sense after so little time. The sincerity in his eyes made her heart race. But before she could respond, a commotion. Down the hall caught their attention. A stunning blonde woman in designer clothes was arguing with a nurse. When she spotted Dominic, she marched toward them. There you are. I've been calling you all night. She glared at Selina before turning, a brilliant smile on Dominic. The investors are waiting, darling. We need to go. Victoria, Dominic said stiffly. I told you I'd be unavailable today. And I told the Tokyo investors you'd make an exception. She hooked her arm through his possessively. They won't close the deal without you. Selina stepped back, suddenly feeling very out of place. You should go, she told Dominic. I need to be with my father anyway. Selina, it's fine. She forced a smile. Thank you for your help last night. Victoria looked between them, her eyes narrowing. Oh, I see. She's your latest distraction. She laughed coldly. Darling, you can do so much better. That's enough, Dominic snapped. But Victoria wasn't finished. Reaching into her purse, she pulled out a tabloid magazine. You might want to see this before you waste any more time. Here. The front page showed a grainy photo of Selina entering Dominic's building 2 weeks ago with the headline, Caldwell's $1 Million Night, Billionaire Pays for Pleasure. Selina felt the blood drain from her face. How? Someone at that agency you used isn't as discreet as they promised, Victoria said smugly. The story breaks nationally tomorrow. Dominic grabbed the magazine, his face darkening with fury. I'll handle this. You better, Victoria said. The board is already concerned about your recent erratic behavior. This scandal could jeopardize everything. Go wait in the car, he ordered. When she hesitated, he added more forcefully, now. After Victoria left, Dominic turned to Selina, his expression pained. I'll fix this. But Selina was already backing away, humiliation and betrayal washing over her. Just go, Dominic. We both know this. Whatever this is, was never going to work. That's not true, isn't it? Look at us. Look at our worlds. She gestured to the hospital room where her father lay. "This is my reality. Board meetings and Tokyo investors are yours. Selina, just go." Her voice broke. "Please." For a moment, he looked like he might argue. Instead, he reached for her hand and pressed something into it. A business card. "My private number," he said. "When you're ready to talk, call me." Then he was gone, leaving Selina standing alone in the hallway, the tabloid headline burning in her mind. Her one night with Dominic was about to become public knowledge, and her life would never be the same. The national tabloids exploded with the story the next day. Selina's face was plastered across newsstands and gossip sites, always alongside Dominic's "Billionaire's million-dollar mistress," screamed one headline. "Caldwell pays for pleasure," declared another. Selina's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Journalists, old acquaintances, even distant relatives, suddenly curious about her windfall. She finally turned it off completely, focusing instead on her father, who remained blissfully unaware of the scandal as he recovered. "You look tired, sweetheart," Robert said, as Selina sat beside his hospital bed. "Why don't you go home and get some rest?" "I'm fine, Dad." She forced a smile, adjusting his blanket. "The doctor says your numbers are improving. The new treatment plan is working." "Thanks to that foundation," Robert said. "It's like someone was watching over us." Selina's throat tightened. If only her father knew the truth. A knock at the door interrupted them. Dr. Peters entered with a concerned expression. "Selina, may I speak with you outside?" In the hallway, Dr. Peters lowered his voice. "There are reporters downstairs trying to get information about you and your father. Security is keeping them out, but it's becoming disruptive." Selina closed her eyes briefly. "I'm so sorry. This is all my fault." "Not at all." Dr. Peters squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. "But for your father's sake, you might consider moving him to a private facility until this blows over. I can make some calls." "We can't afford—" "The Caldwell Foundation has already approved it," Dr. Peters interrupted gently. "All expenses covered." Selina felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Gratitude warred with pride and anger. Dominic was still trying to control things, to fix her problems with his money. "I need to think about it," she finally said. Back in her father's room, she found him watching TV and froze when she saw what was on the screen. A news anchor was discussing the Caldwell scandal, showing photos of her entering Dominic's building. "Dad, I can explain," she began, rushing to turn off the TV. But Robert's expression wasn't judgmental. It was sad. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Selina!" She sank into the chair, tears filling her eyes. "I couldn't. I was so ashamed of trying to save my life." He reached for her hand. "I raised you better than to think I'd judge you for making a sacrifice like that. You're not disappointed in me?" "The only thing that disappoints me is that you felt you had to carry this burden alone." His eyes were gentle. "You've always been my brave girl, even when I wish you didn't have to be." Selina broke down then, telling her father everything. The deal with Dominic, their unexpected connection, the foundation, Victoria, and now the scandal. "And the worst part is," she finished, wiping her tears, "part of me still wants to see him again, even after all this." Robert studied his daughter's face. "You have feelings for him." "It doesn't matter. Our worlds are too different." "Maybe." Robert shifted in his bed, wincing slightly. "Or maybe this man sees in you what I've always seen. Someone worth changing for." Across town, Dominic Caldwell was in the middle of the most important board meeting of his career. Victoria sat beside him, smug confidence radiating from her perfectly composed face. "The scandal has caused a 3-point drop in our stock," Howard Jensen, the CFO, reported grimly. "Major investors are concerned about Caldwell Enterprises' image." "The media will move on to the next scandal by next week," Dominic said dismissively. "This is nothing." "With respect, Dominic," Victoria interjected smoothly, "this isn't just about the escort story. It's about your recent erratic behavior. The Cancer Foundation launched without board approval. The withdrawal from the Manhattan Heights project, a project that would have displaced hundreds of low-income families," Dominic cut in. A project that would have made us millions, Victoria countered. The board is questioning your judgment. Howard cleared his throat. There's a motion on the table to temporarily relieve you of your CEO duties until this situation stabilizes. Dominic's face hardened. I founded this company. I own controlling interest, and the bylaws allow for temporary leadership changes in situations that threaten company stability, Victoria said, sliding a document toward him. The vote has already been taken. I'll be acting CEO for the next 30 days. Fury coursed through Dominic. This is your doing, he said quietly to Victoria. You planted that story. She leaned closer, whispering so only he could hear. I protected the company from your midlife crisis. That girl is nobody, Dominic. She's not worth throwing away everything you've built. Dominic stood, buttoning his suit jacket. I'll remind you all that while I may be temporarily stepping aside as CEO, I remain the majority shareholder. Any major decisions will still require my approval. He walked out, ignoring the buzzing of his phone. His driver was waiting outside. Where to, sir? Dominic hesitated. What he wanted, who he wanted, was clear in his mind. But would Selina even speak to him after the media nightmare he'd brought into her life? St. Luke's Hospital, he decided. When he arrived, he was immediately recognized. Whispers followed him through the lobby. At Robert Carter's room, he paused outside the door, hearing voices inside. Selina was reading aloud, something about a knight and a dragon. He knocked gently. The reading stopped. After a moment, Selina opened the door. Her eyes widened at the sight of him. Dominic, I need to talk to you. His voice was low, urgent. Please. She glanced back at her father, who nodded encouragingly. In the hallway, Dominic struggled to find the right words. I'm sorry about the media. I'm doing everything I can to shut down the story. It's too late for that. Selina crossed her arms protectively. Everyone knows. I never meant for this to happen. He moved closer. Selina, there's something you should know. Victoria and we were engaged once. She's had expectations since then, and you didn't think that was worth mentioning before. It was 3 years ago. It's over. Clearly not for her. Selina shook her head. Why are you here, Dominic? What do you want from me? The question hung between them, demanding honesty. I want a chance, he finally said. A real chance, not based on arrangements or money or anything else, just us seeing where this goes. Selina looked away. You don't even know me. I know enough. He gently turned her face back to his. I know you're brave and loyal. I know you challenge me in ways no one else does. I know that one night with you wasn't nearly enough. Her eyes searched his. Your world is destroying mine right now. My face is on every gossip site. People are calling me horrible names. Let me fix it. With money, that's always your solution, isn't it? But there was less heat in her words than before. Come with me, he said suddenly. Tonight, away from all of this. I can't leave my father. The private facility Dr. Peters mentioned, it's excellent. Your father would have the best care, privacy from the press, and you could visit any time. Selina hesitated. Where would we go? I have a house on a private island in the Caribbean. No press, no Victoria, no board meetings. Just time to figure out what this is between us. It sounded like an escape from the nightmare her life had become. But doubt lingered. What? About your company. A shadow crossed his face. They've asked me to step aside temporarily. Victoria is acting CEO. Because of me, Selina said, realization dawning. Because of us. Because I've been making decisions they don't understand. He took her hand. For the first time in years, I'm thinking about more than just profit margins. That scares them. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Mia. OMG, turn on channel 6 now. Dread pooling in her stomach, Selina found a waiting room with a television and switched to channel 6. Dominic followed, his expression darkening as Victoria appeared on screen, giving an interview. Mr. Caldwell has been under tremendous stress. Lately, Victoria was saying smoothly, his judgment has been compromised, which is why the board has asked me to step in temporarily. As for this unfortunate scandal, the young woman in question has a history of targeting wealthy men. Our legal team is investigating previous extortion attempts. That's a lie, Selina gasped. "She's trying to discredit you," Dominic said grimly. "To protect the company's image and to hurt you. Why? She has what she wants now, your company, because she knows you matter to me." His eyes met hers. "More than the company." The weight of his words hung in the air between them. Before Selina could respond, her phone rang. It was Dr. Peters. "Selina, you need to come quickly. Your father's taken a turn." She ran back to her father's room, Dominic right behind her. Inside, medical staff surrounded Robert's bed as machines beeped urgently. "What's happening?" Selina demanded. "His blood pressure dropped suddenly," Dr. Peters explained. "We're stabilizing him, but he may have had a small stroke." The next few hours passed in a blur of tests and specialists. Dominic remained by Selina's side, making calls to bring in additional experts. By evening, Robert was stable again, but the scare had shaken Selina deeply. "He needs consistent, specialized care now," Dr. Peters told her gently. "The private facility Mr. Caldwell suggested would be ideal." Too exhausted to argue, Selina nodded. "When can he be transferred?" "Tomorrow morning. I've already made the arrangements," Dominic said. At her questioning look, he added, "I hope that's okay." "Thank you," she said simply. That night, as Robert slept under close monitoring, Selina and Dominic sat in the small waiting area outside his room. "You should get some rest," Dominic said, noticing the dark circles under her eyes. "I can't leave him. I'll stay and watch over him." When she hesitated, he added, "I promise I'll wake you if anything changes." Too tired to resist, Selina curled up on the small sofa. Dominic draped his jacket over her. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked softly, already half asleep. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Because for the first time in my life, someone else's happiness matters more than my own." When Selina woke hours later, dawn was breaking. She found Dominic talking quietly with her father, who was awake and alert. "There she is," Robert said with a weak smile. "Dominic has been telling me about the island where I'll be recovering." Selina looked between them in confusion. "You'll be going to the private facility, Dad." "And then to the island," Robert said. "Dominic's made arrangements for my care there. He says the sea air will do me good." She turned to Dominic, who shrugged. "The facility is excellent for immediate care, but long-term recovery would be better. Somewhere peaceful. The island has a full medical suite and staff. You're just deciding my father's future now." Despite her words, there was more surprise than anger in her voice. "Actually, I decided," Robert interjected, "and I've also decided that you're going with Dominic tonight, while I get settled at the facility." "Dad?" "No arguments, Selina." Robert's voice was weak but firm. "You haven't left my side in months. You need a break, and you two need to figure things out." He looked at Dominic. "You'll take care of my girl?" "With my life," Dominic promised. Later that day, after Robert was comfortably settled in the private facility, Selina found herself hesitating outside. "We don't have to go tonight," Dominic said gently. "We can wait until you're ready." Selina looked back at the facility, then at the man beside her. The man who'd turned her life upside down in ways both terrible and wonderful. "No," she decided. "Dad's right. We need to figure this out away from all the noise." Dominic's private jet was waiting at a small airfield outside the city. As they settled into the luxurious cabin, Selina felt a strange mixture of fear and anticipation. "What happens now?" she asked as the plane began to taxi. Dominic took her hand. "Now we get to know each other, for real this time. No arrangements, no $1 million, just us." The plane lifted into the evening sky, carrying them away from the scandal, from Victoria's machinations, from the world that had tried to tear them apart before they'd even had a chance to begin. But as the lights of New York faded below them, neither Selina nor Dominic noticed the photographer, with the long-range lens capturing their departure. Or the text he sent to Victoria with the photo attached. "Got them. They're running away together." In her temporary CEO office, Victoria smiled as she received the message. "Perfect," she murmured, picking up her phone to call her media contacts. The board will have no choice now. The scandal was about to get much worse, and Dominic and Selina, flying toward what they hoped would be peace, were heading straight into a storm neither of them saw coming. Paradise was exactly what Selina needed. Dominic's private island was a lush tropical haven with white sand beaches and crystal clear waters. The main house, a stunning open-air villa, offered breathtaking views of the ocean from every room. For 3 days, they existed in a bubble of peace. Selina called the private facility twice daily to check on her father, who was improving steadily. Dominic kept his phone turned off, focusing entirely on Selina. They swam in the warm ocean, walked along the beach at sunset, and talked for hours. Selina learned about Dominic's childhood in poverty, his determination to never be helpless again, and how the wealth he'd accumulated had slowly isolated him from genuine connections. "Money changes how everyone sees you," he admitted as they sat on the beach watching the sunset. "After a while, you stop believing anyone could want you for yourself." "Is that why you made that arrangement with me?" Selina asked softly. "To keep things simple?" He nodded. "I thought one night would be enough. That I could get you out of my system." His fingers traced patterns in the sand. "I was very wrong." In turn, Selina shared stories of her childhood, her dreams of finishing nursing school, and her fear of losing her father, the one constant in her life. On their 4th night, as they dined on the terrace under the stars, Dominic's private chef served champagne. "To new beginnings," Dominic said, raising his glass. Selina smiled, clinking her glass against his. "To getting to know each other for real." After dinner, they walked along the moonlit beach, hand in hand. "I never thought I could feel this way again," Dominic said, stopping to face her. "Or maybe I never felt this way at all until you." He leaned down to kiss her, and Selina melted into his embrace. Unlike their first night together, which had been passionate but shadowed by their arrangement, this kiss held promise of something real, something lasting. Later that night, as they lay tangled in the sheets of the master bedroom, Selina's phone rang. Seeing the private facility's number, she answered immediately. "Miss Carter," the nurse said, "your father is asking for you. He seems upset." "Is he okay medically?" Selina sat up, alarmed. "Yes, his condition is stable, but he's insisting on speaking with you urgently." Dominic was already reaching for his own phone. "I'll arrange for the jet to take us back first thing in the morning." When Selina called her father directly, his voice was strained. "Selina, you need to come home." "There are things happening that you don't know about." "What things, Dad? Are you really okay?" "I'm fine, but that woman, Victoria, she was here." Selina's blood ran cold. "What? At the facility? What did she want?" "She brought newspapers, showed me things they're saying about you. Terrible things." Robert's voice broke. "And about your mother." "Mom, what does Mom have to do with any of this? She's dug up the past, Selina. Things I never wanted you to know." After hanging up, Selina turned to Dominic, who had been watching her face grow paler by the second. "We need to go back, now, tonight." "The jet is already being prepared," he assured her. "Selina, what's wrong? What did Victoria do?" "I don't know exactly. Something about my mother. She began throwing clothes into her suitcase." "My dad sounded scared, Dominic." "He's never scared." On the flight back to New York, Dominic managed to access the internet. The headlines that greeted them made Selina's stomach churn. Caldwell's mistress, like mother, like daughter, was splashed across multiple tabloids. The stories beneath claimed that Selina's mother had been a high-priced escort who had targeted wealthy men, including Selina's father. "This is a lie," Selina whispered, tears streaming down her face. "My mother was a kindergarten teacher. She and my dad were high school sweethearts." Dominic's face was grim. "Victoria is trying to destroy your reputation completely, to make it impossible for us to be together without destroying my company's value. Why does she hate me so much? She has your company now, temporarily." Dominic's eyes darkened. "And Victoria has always wanted 2 things, my money and control over me." "You threaten both." When they arrived at the private facility, they found Robert Carter sitting up in bed, an array of newspapers spread around him. His face was drawn with anger and grief. "Dad," Selina rushed to embrace him, I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Robert held her tightly. I never wanted you to find out this way. Selina pulled back, confusion spreading across her face. Find out what? Those stories aren't true. Mum was a teacher. Robert's eyes filled with tears. She was a teacher when I met her. But before that, he took a deep breath. Your mother had a difficult life, Selina. She did what she had to do. To survive after her parents threw her out, she was very young and alone. The world seemed to tilt beneath Selina's feet. What are you saying? The woman who came here, Victoria, she had private investigators dig into our past. They found records from before we got married, before your mother changed her name. Mum was an escort, Selina whispered in disbelief. She was a survivor, Robert corrected firmly. And when we fell in love, she left that life behind forever. We built a new life, a good life. He took Selina's hands. I never told you because it didn't matter. Your mother was the most loving, devoted person I've ever known. Dominic, who had been standing back to give them privacy, stepped forward. Mr. Carter, I had no idea Victoria would go this far. I'll make this right. Robert's eyes narrowed. How exactly do you plan to do that? My wife's memory has been dragged through the mud. My daughter's reputation is destroyed. Dad, Selina interjected, this isn't Dominic's fault, isn't it? Robert challenged. His world, his ex-fiancée, his company, and you're caught in the crossfire. Before Dominic could respond, his phone rang. It was his lawyer. I need to take this, he said, stepping out of the room. In the hallway, Dominic received the news he'd been dreading. The board was calling for an emergency vote to permanently remove him as CEO, citing moral turpitude and actions detrimental to shareholder value. Victoria has convinced them that your relationship with Ms. Carter represents a pattern of reckless behavior, his lawyer explained. The tabloid stories about her mother have only strengthened their position. This ends now, Dominic said coldly. Tell the board I'll be there in an hour. When he returned to Robert's room, he found Selina sitting beside her father, both of them looking shell-shocked. I have to go to an emergency board meeting, he told them, but I'll be back as soon as I can. Selina stood. I'm coming with you. Selina, this could get ugly. I'm already in the ugliest part, she said firmly. I want to face this, face her directly. Robert nodded his approval. Go. It's time to stop hiding and start fighting. So as to fight, the Caldwell Enterprises boardroom fell silent as Dominic entered with Selina by his side. Victoria, seated at the head of the table in Dominic's usual chair, couldn't hide her shock. This is a closed meeting, she said sharply. Ms. Carter is not welcome here. Actually, Dominic said, his voice dangerously calm, since this meeting concerns both of us, she has every right to be here. He guided Selina to a seat, then remained standing, commanding the room with his presence. Before you vote, he addressed the board, there are a few things you should know. He pulled out a flash drive and plugged it into the room's computer system. On the large screen at the front of the room appeared an email from Victoria to a private investigator, dated the day after Dominic and Selina's first night together. Find anything you can on her, the email read. I need leverage. More emails followed, documenting Victoria's systematic campaign to destroy Selina's reputation and undermine Dominic's leadership. Where did you get those? Victoria demanded, her face white with fury. I may have temporarily stepped aside as CEO, but I still have allies in this company, Dominic replied coolly, including in the IT department. He turned back to the board. Victoria has been working against this company's interests. She deliberately orchestrated a media scandal to damage our stock price and force me out permanently. That's absurd, Victoria snapped. Everything I've done has been to protect this company from your reckless obsession with this gold digger. Selina flinched, but held her ground. Is that what you think I am? We all know what you are, Victoria hissed, just like your mother. My mother, Selina said, rising to her feet, was a woman who overcame incredible hardship, who built a beautiful life despite starting with nothing, who taught me that a person's worth isn't measured by their bank account or their social status. She looked around the table. I never asked Dominic for anything. I never wanted his money or his influence. In fact, I walked away after our arrangement was fulfilled. She turned to Victoria. You're so afraid of losing him that you've become something ugly, but you can't destroy what we have because it's not built on money or power. It's built on something you clearly don't understand. Genuine connection. The boardroom was silent. Dominic moved to stand beside Selina, taking her hand. I built this company from nothing, he told the board. I've made all of you very wealthy in the process, but if staying at the helm means sacrificing my chance at real happiness, then I choose happiness. He looked at Selina. I choose her. You'd walk away from everything? Victoria asked incredulously. For her? In a heartbeat. Dominic's voice was firm. But I don't think I'll have to. He nodded to Howard Jensen, the CFO, who cleared his throat. The board has reviewed the evidence Mr. Caldwell provided before this meeting, Howard announced. In light of Ms. Reynolds' apparent attempts to manipulate stock prices for personal gain, we've decided to reinstate Dominic as CEO, effective immediately. Victoria stood, knocking over her chair. You can't do this. I have a contract. A contract predicated on my voluntary stepping aside, Dominic pointed out, which I'm no longer doing. Security appeared at the door. Ms. Reynolds, please gather your personal items. Your access to the building has been terminated. As Victoria was escorted out, hurling threats of lawsuits and revenge, Dominic addressed the remaining board members. I understand your concerns about my personal life affecting this company, so let me be clear about my intentions. He looked at Selina. I intend to build a future with this woman, if she'll have me. I also intend to continue leading Caldwell Enterprises with the same commitment I've always shown. He squeezed Selina's hand. The difference is, now I understand that success isn't just measured in profit margins. It's measured in the lives we improve, including our own. 6 months later, Selina stood on the terrace of Dominic's, now their penthouse, looking out at the city lights. So much had changed. Her father, fully recovered and stronger than ever, had moved into a comfortable apartment nearby. The scandal had faded, replaced by new tabloid obsessions. Selina had returned to nursing school, with Dominic's full support, and Dominic himself had transformed Caldwell Enterprises, expanding the Cancer Foundation and launching initiatives to provide affordable housing in the very neighborhoods he once would have redeveloped into luxury properties. Penny for your thoughts, Dominic said, joining her on the terrace with 2 glasses of champagne. Just thinking about how different my life is now. She accepted the glass. A year ago I was working 3 jobs and drowning in debt, and now you're dating a reformed, ruthless billionaire. He smiled, but there was a hint of vulnerability in his eyes. Any regrets? Selina considered the question. I regret that initial arrangement, not because it led us here, but because it wasn't how we should have begun. I agree. Dominic set down his glass and took both her hands in his. Which is why I want to start over, properly this time. To her, Jacques. He knelt before her, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Selina Carter, you changed everything for me. You made me see that wealth means nothing without someone to share it with, someone who sees the man beneath the money. He opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring. I'm not offering you $1 million for one night. I'm offering you everything I am for a lifetime. Will you marry me? Tears filled Selina's eyes. Are you sure? After everything, the scandal, my past, my mother's past, I've never been more sure of anything. His eyes held hers. Your past made you who you are, the woman I love with all my heart. Selina thought about the journey that had brought them here, from a desperate arrangement to genuine love, from suspicion to trust, from 2 separate worlds to one shared future. Yes, she whispered, her heart full. Yes, I'll marry you. As Dominic slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to kiss her, Selina knew that what had begun as a transaction had transformed into something priceless. They had been bought for a night, but they would be bound for a lifetime. Behind them, the terrace doors opened. Robert Carter appeared, beaming at the sight of the ring on his daughter's finger. I see, he finally asked, Robert said, embracing them both. About time. You knew? Selina asked in surprise. He asked for my blessing weeks ago. Robert looked at Dominic with approval. I told him he'd better make an honest woman of you after all the drama he put you through. Dominic laughed. Actually, what you said was that if I ever hurt her, you'd find a way to make a billionaire disappear without a trace. And I meant it, Robert said, though his eyes twinkled. As the three of them celebrated, Selena's phone pinged with a news alert. A viral video was spreading across social media. Victoria Reynolds, clearly intoxicated at a society event, ranting about Dominic and Selena. Some people never change, Dominic sighed, seeing the headline. But we did, Selena said, turning off her phone and setting it aside. And that's what matters. She looked at the two men she loved most in the world. Her father, who had raised her with unconditional love, and Dominic, who had learned to love her the same way. In the end, her mother's past didn't define her. Victoria's schemes couldn't destroy them. And what had begun as the darkest moment of her life had led to the brightest future she could imagine. Later that night, as they lay in bed together, Dominic traced the outline of the ring on her finger. "When we first met," he said softly, "I thought I was buying one perfect night to satisfy my curiosity about you." "And instead?" Selena asked, curling against him. He kissed her forehead gently. "Instead, I found the rest of my life." Outside, the city continued its restless pace. Lights glimmered across the skyline. Somewhere, Victoria was plotting her next move. The media was hunting for its next scandal. The world kept turning. But in the penthouse above it all, Selena and Dominic had found something that transcended the world that had tried to tear them apart. A love that had begun with a price tag, but had become truly priceless. They had been bought for a night. They would be bound for a lifetime, and their story was only just beginning. The end.